What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today we are continuing our series of handing out off-season grades, and today we are going to talk about the NFC South. That means we're talking about the Falcons, the Panthers, the Saints, and the Buccaneers in today's video. So let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. What you think about free agency, the draft, and overall off-season for all four of these squads? Where are my grades right? Where are they wrong? And let me hear some of your favorite draft picks, signings, trades, all that sort of stuff down below in the comment section. You guys can understand the concept of this video, and if you want to see how it's broken out and some other divisions, definitely go back and check out the previous videos we've done in this series so far. But let's go ahead and start talking about the NFC South. Leading things off is the Atlanta Falcons, 7-10 last year, which that's a record that was pretty consistent throughout this division, so you'll see that a lot in these slides. But, you know, free agency grade, I'll go B+, best signing of Jesse Bates, but I think there was a lot of shrewd moves, right? Like giving a one-year flyer to Calais Campbell, see what he's all about. David Onyemata, like that signing. Bud Dupree gives you at least a solid enough baseline. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar, but could be an okay starter at worst, and you get him on a one-year, $5 million deal. Can't be mad about that. And then, you know, we'll kind of talk about it later on, because free agency, I'm focusing on signings, off-season grade. We'll talk about trades, but even the Jeff Okudah move kind of feels like you're raising the floor of that defense and giving up a fifth-rounder for what potentially could be there with the upside. Transitioning, though, to the NFL draft. This is a team I'm coming around on a little bit. The first two picks add on to their strength, right? Now, granted, when your strength is your run game, I don't know if that's really moving the needle to make you like outside the playoffs to front runner to win the division or anything like that. Because to me, it's a passing league, and that's where if you're going to make a difference, that's the area to add on to a strength. But adding Bijan Robinson to one of the best, you know, run blocking, you know, schemes, and Arthur Smith, who is gonna have that part of the offense be super efficient. That's intriguing, right? Like, and that's why you hear it on the talk about he should be the number one pick in dynasty drafts, and maybe he should be the first overall pick in, you know, redraft, you know, fantasy leagues, right? Because we have such a high expectation, and we saw so much volume with Derrick Henry, and now it's Bijan Robinson in his athletic prime, and he's got, you know, tread on the tires, but it wasn't overly used at Texas by any stretch. So a guy who could hit the ground running, and wouldn't be surprised if he's getting 300 plus touches, you know, each of the 4 years on his rookie contract, right? Like, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. Guy could put up some huge numbers. So is that exciting? Yes. And then Matt Bergeron to play left guard, I'm actually interested by that. Like, good blocker on the move. I think by moving him inside, you're limiting some of maybe the weaknesses he would have against stronger defensive linemen getting into his chest. That might still happen with defensive tackles, but I think there's a way to kind of give him some additional help with running back chipping in and block, and they're staying in the backfield or whatever, double teams with the center. And I think there's some other ways to kind of hide that if you get into a spot where it is a true issue. But when it comes to getting on the move, he's a very athletic tackle, and you feel the power when he is moving forward. It's just when people get into him and he starts having to, you know, work backwards, where his power just evaporates like that. So that's definitely an intriguing fit. I actually think guard might be a best spot for him. So Bijan plus another really nice run blocking guard. Okay, adding on to his strength, that's fun. And then Zach Harrison, didn't mind him in the third round. He's this, you know, uber toolsy, has a great frame, ton of strength. Not the bendiest guy, but can win in other ways. And, you know, Ohio State edge rusher is always worth taking a shot on those guys. And he's actually a solid athlete from every standpoint, but like the three cone in his bend. And then Clark Phillips in the fourth round, right? You know, Richie Grant started to play the slot a good bit, but, you know, in passing situations, wouldn't be mad if that ends up being Clark Phillips. Now, you know, does he have the twitch to maybe stick inside? We'll have to wait and see, but, you know, if he doesn't work out, it's a fourth rounder. I don't mind it at that point. So, yeah, a little small and arm length. Again, it's going to probably make him a slot only. We'll have to see if he's got the athletic twitch to be able to stick in that area, but you look at the tape in Utah, and to me, it's worth taking a shot on him in the fourth round pretty comfortably. So, excited to see if he becomes that, you know, passing situation nickel cornerback for Atlanta. And to me, that's why I went with him for the best pick, because there's minimal downside. You know, again, if he doesn't work out, it's a fourth rounder, you'll live. But there's potential that it becomes a really, you know, big time impact player. Teams are playing, you know, nickel 70 to 80% of the time. So he could be a guy that consistently seen the field. And maybe that allows you to do some different things with Richie Grant as well, or Grant becomes your kind of rundowns nickel. You know, we'll figure that part out. But I think Clark Phillips, if Okudah plays okay, Terrell gets back on track, he could be that, you know, last piece needed to solidify that cornerback trio and become a really solid unit. Offseason grade, I'll go B+ overall. I think I generally like what Atlanta has done. And, you know, I thought about B, but again, taking into account the Jeff Okudah move, fifth rounder for a guy that, at worst, you know, you're down a fifth round pick. Okay, like whatever. And you're taking a shot on a guy who was a top 3 pick. You know, I think that's a risk appetite I'm willing to take. And the upside of that is You get a top 3, selection sticking at corner on the other side of another first rounder of AJ Terrell, and all of a sudden that secondary is looking legit. So you get Bates, you get Okudah paired up with Terrell already there. Okay, I'm listening. You got my attention. So, but generally speaking, raising the floor of that defense, I think, is the best thing that this team could have done. For so long now, we've been saying Atlanta needs defense, Atlanta needs defense, Atlanta needs defense. And I don't know if it's like a top 10 unit or anything, but Jesse Bates goes a long way. The Okudah trade has some upside. Drafting Clark Phillips, adding Zach Harrison and Bud Dupree to Arnold Ebiketie. Also get Caden Ellis from New Orleans, and it's Calais Campbell, and it's David Onyemata. Like, they just did a bunch of these small moves that incrementally, here's 1%. Improvement here. Here's a couple percentage points getting better there. Here's an okay player that will solidify and give us a better floor. All those little things that I think take this defense from one of the worst in the NFL to probably middle of the pack with room to get even higher than that. But if Atlanta goes from a bottom of the barrel NFL defense to middle of the pack, that is a huge step in the right direction. And that really could be the catalyst on top of, that run game is going to be great. We'll see what Desmond Ridder is in year 2, but he's got weapons around him. That defense takes a step forward from, let's just call him the 29th best defense in the NFL to 16. That could be enough to take this team and put them in the postseason by winning the division, which is a division that's up for grabs. Biggest question mark left has got to be edge. I'm still looking for a difference maker there. Dupree could be okay. Lorenzo Carter, more of a coverage specialist, high-end athlete, solid run defender, not much in the way of being a high-end pass rusher. Arnold Ebiketie, though, year 2 guy, uber athletic, wasn't super impressive his rookie year, but maybe he takes that step forward and we get to see that athleticism play that much more. Zach Harrison's another name I could have thrown out here, 3rd round rookie, but Ebiketie, who wins with speed and Ben, Harrison, who wins with power. One of those two guys is going to have to step up if this defense wants to get even better than kind of middle of the pack, middle of the road territory. Carolina Panthers also went 7-10 last year, finished second in the division. Actually was, a week 17 win or week 18 win away from getting into the playoffs. If they took down the Bucs, they would have been the NFC South representative, which is crazy to think considering their QB carousel last year. Free agency grade, I think my favorite move is Von Bell. It's a little tough because there were a few moves that I liked, but B- overall. A lot of it was kind of keeping who they had in house. Adam Thielen, I think he's kind of the washed up point of his career, but there could be something to glean from that and to gain from that, really. DJ Chark is kind of a guy I'm always willing to give a 1-year flyer on, see what he could be as a deep threat and potentially that third target share guy. Also, you bring in Hayden Hurst, not a bad tight end to add in the mix. They just kind of made some solid moves. Re-signing Bradley Bozeman, if it wasn't Von Bell, that probably would have been my favorite move because he was just solid for him last year. 3 years, $18 million. I am more than willing to give $6 million a pop to a solid starting center. So I like that move a ton. But Von Bell, man, he was such an integral part of that Bengals secondary. It's funny, back-to-back teams now where we're talking about my favorite move in free agency being a team signing their former Bengals safety. That's fun. But Von Bell, in a different role than obviously Jesse Bates had, but such a good, strong safety. And they asked him to do so many different things. And they would change up the coverage so much and how they were playing opposing offenses to where Von Bell's task really did change a lot from one play to the next. And I think that gives a ton of flexibility to the Panthers back end, allows you to do that much more stuff with Jeremy Chin, move him all over the field. So interested to see what his signing means for that secondary and how creative Ejiro Evero can get. I do want to make note of that too. Also, obviously a change in the coaching staff. Frank Reich, love that hire. Ejiro Evero as a DC, love that addition to the staff as well. Josh McCown, interesting add as the QB coach. So I'm not really baking that in the grade, but if you wanted to say, hey, free agency should be a B or offseason grade should be B+ to A- because of the coaching staff, I can hear that argument, but I didn't really fully account for it in these grades. NFL draft grade, I'll give it a B+. Like Bryce Young, like Jonathan Mingo as an addition as well. DJ Johnson was kind of the one pick I wasn't super crazy about, but everything else he did in this draft I thought was really, really solid. But obviously the pick that matters the most is Bryce Young, right? You get the quarterback position right, this team's going to go through a pretty expedited, rebuild. They're going to be pretty competitive in a wide open division pretty quick. And Bryce Young was the number one player on my big board, so I think they made the right selection. We're just going to have to see what that size and that weight, what that actually plays like at the NFL level. But I have confidence with his processing ability, his pocket presence, his accuracy, all the stuff that I loved about him as a prospect will translate to the NFL level. Offseason grade, I'll go B+ overall. Again, solid free agency. The draft was pretty good, and the move from 9 to 1. Yes, it cost you DJ Moore. Yes, it cost you a lot of draft capital, but for this team to go from multi-year rebuild to potentially one offseason, maybe two, getting back into contention in an open division, that was the type of move to make, especially considering, again, the NFC South's wide open. Brady's gone. There are 4 teams fighting to become the team to rule the land, so to speak, for the next 5 years. And I think Carolina moving up to 1 made the strongest effort to be able to become that squad. So, like that a ton. And obviously, Bryce Young, again, number 1 player on my big board. Love the aggressiveness to go get that guy and slingshot this rebuild in the right direction. Biggest question mark, I'll go wide receiver. There's a couple spots, edge 2, cornerback 2 maybe, but I'll go wide receiver and the guy who could step up, Jonathan Mingo. DJ Chark's a deep specialist. Adam Thielen, if he's anything, is going to be a slot wide receiver. And then Laviska Shenault, if he's anything at this point, is a gadget guy. If there's one guy who I think could turn into a win in multiple spots, win in a variety of ways, number 1 wide receiver, it's Jonathan Mingo. And he was a kind of a late riser in the draft cycle, but solid size. And part of the reason he was a little bit late in the game maybe was his production at Ole Miss wasn't crazy. But I think quarterback play kind of hampered what he could have potentially been. A guy who route running wise can win at all 3 levels, good yak ability. He's kind of a jack of all trades. And I don't say he's special at any one thing, but he's not too far off, and I could see a world where a year or 2 into his NFL career, he does become special in one area or another, just because it's just hard to gauge what he could have been maybe with better quarterback play and a guy who took more advantage of what his skill sets are, and maybe we get to see the full picture, right? So if there's anybody who's going to develop into that number 1 wide receiver for Bryce Young in year 1, to me, it's got to be Jonathan Mingo. So he's the guy who, in my opinion, might step up for that wide receiver question mark. All right, to the New Orleans Saints, another team that went 7-10. Free agency grade, I'll give it a B. I really like the Jamal Williams signing, but they did a lot of really creative stuff. Like getting Michael Thomas back was not something I thought they could do, but reworked that contract and got him back in town. And of course, you got to talk about Derek Carr as well. Like that was the big ticket free agent move. It's not my favorite signing just because the value with Jamal Williams is insane, but if you were to say most impactful move, it's obviously getting upgraded at the quarterback position. Derek Carr is definitely better than Andy Dalton. Dalton played well last year, but Carr could be that much more. And I think this is a new situation where maybe Carr is even better than what he was in Vegas last year with the Josh McDaniel change from Jay Gruden and that offensive philosophy beforehand. So it could be best for Carr, could be best for the Saints there. But my favorite value signing was probably Jamal Williams, but of course, honorable mention to Derek Carr because that's going to be the most impactful. NFL draft grade, I'll go B-. I like a lot of the moves they made. A.T. Perry in the 6th round, Ryan Brzee at 29, Foskey at 40, and Kendre Miller in the 3rd round at 77. There was a lot that they did that I liked. Just none of it was like, wow, what a steal. Love that. Absolute, insane surplus value in that selection. Like, wow, can't believe that guy fell into their laps. It was just, okay, that's a good move. Okay, I like that draft pick. Solid. And then A.T. Perry maybe in the 6th round was a little surprising he fell that far because big guy, 4.47 speed, ton of production at Wake Forest. Like, that was a guy that was like, why is he still available? But, wide receivers, there's a lot of them to choose from, so eventually someone's going to fall. So credit to them taking advantage of that. I'm interested to see how he factors into the mix. But, yeah, solid draft. I think they patched up that defensive line, got an extra edge rusher, found that, David Onyemata, potential replacement in Brian Brzee, and, Kendre Miller, especially with Alvin Kamara facing suspension and also huge contract cap hits over the next couple of years. I could see a world where it's Williams and Miller moving forward post Alvin Kamara. So they're kind of future-proofing that position on the roster as well. So solid draft, just wasn't one that wowed me really. And then we get to the offseason grade as a whole. I'll go B-. And best move, again, signing Derek Carr, because that's going to be the most impactful move, but keeping that supporting cast around him with Michael Thomas, Chris Olave going into year 2. They signed a couple tight ends, including re-signing Jawan Johnson, which that's intriguing. And it's like, man, if you can just have this deep rotation of pass catchers, couple tight ends, I like the wide receiver room, Alvin Kamara post-suspension, but even outside of him, Miller plus Williams. Okay, there is a good supporting cast around Derek Carr, and I could see a world where, one, the system is more beneficial to him and he'll have a bounce back because of that alone, but he's also got a ton of weapons around him to make him a threat to have a bounce back season. So yeah, like what they did, not only getting Derek Carr, but keeping him in an environment where he should thrive and have a lot of success around him because of the pieces around him. And then moving on, biggest question mark left, I'll go cornerback 2. Really, to me, it's like the depth, because this is a team that feels like a Marshawn Lattimore, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, one of those 3 guys getting hurt, that type of an injury away from being not as good on the defensive side, right? Because it feels like a team that I like the starters, but the depth behind it is a little weak. But cornerback 2 is one of those starting spots where it's like, yeah, that could be an issue. Because Lattimore's good. I like Lattimore a good bit. But I can see teams just avoiding him because Paulson Adebo or Alontae Taylor doesn't take a step forward. So you got a second-year player in Taylor, third-year player in Adebo. I'm going with the more veteran of those 2 guys in Adebo. Also, I think his rookie season was a little bit stronger than Taylor was last year, but it's not really an equal comparison. It's a little tough to judge that. Different years, different opponents, different context, and everything like that. So one of those two guys, Taylor or Adebo, is going to step up and at least be solid, right? Because again, I think you have a star to superstar level corner on the other side. And Lattimore, you just need someone to play okay, average, solid baseline play at cornerback too. I think this defense can be legit. So that's kind of the one big question mark I have with this squad. And I think Taylor might be the guy, or Adebo for that matter, might be the guy to step up and kind of give him an answer to that question. Last thing we talk about, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 8-9, they won the division. Yeah, this wasn't the craziest offseason. It was really tough for me to grade because of that. They didn't really try to do a whole lot in free agency. It was C+ because I like the re-signing of Levante David. I really like the re-signing of Jamel Dean. That's my favorite signing. I'm a big Jamel Dean fan, so re-signing Carlton Davis last offseason, Dean this offseason, feels like you're keeping a strength there. Ryan Neal's a sneaky underrated signing, and then bringing in an offensive lineman like a Matt Filer, kind of an underrated move. We'll talk about him later on. And really, it's going to come down to the quarterback position. Because I think they did a lot, and we'll kind of talk about that once we get to the overall offseason grade. Did a lot to keep the roster outside of the QB situation really strong. The wide receiver room is still really good. They patched up the interior offensive line, or they made a couple moves to, in turn, try to patch up that interior offensive line. Tackle is going to be a question mark there, right tackle in specific, and Luke Gedeke stick. And then the defense, a couple draft picks, a couple signings, like the D-line's looking better. Maybe a question mark at edge if Shaq Barrett can be the same guy, but if not, I think there are some contingencies in place to keep that unit okay. You get Levante David back, so it's still him and Devin White, depending on potential trade there. And then the secondary, Neal plus Winfield plus, Dean and Carlton Davis. They're keeping a lot of those strengths in place. It's going to come down to Baker Mayfield. Can Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask in, year 3 now? Can one of those guys prove to be a more than capable solid starter? Because if Baker Mayfield looks like he did the year Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year, was that 2 years ago now? 2.5? Then, okay, this team might be sneaky. They might be a really solid unit, and don't rule out them maybe going 10-7. It's not impossible if Baker Mayfield kind of figures it out. But if it's the Baker Mayfield we saw playing Carolina last year, and it's Kyle Trask, who we haven't seen yet, and it feels like they're kind of, I don't want to say avoiding, because you get the chance to sign Tom Brady, you sign Tom Brady, but a guy that they haven't openly given him the shot for, and the reason they bring in Baker Mayfield is maybe because they're a little trepidatious about Trask. If he doesn't pan out or he doesn't look the part, then okay, then all the good things about this roster are going to go by the wayside, and then you're hoping to get Caleb Williams in the 2024 draft or Drake May or someone like that. And then you're hoping to get this team back into the playoff mix. But yeah, it's going to come down to the QB position. But I think they did a lot in free agency to kind of keep strengths around it, though. NFL draft, though, long tangent aside, sorry about that. B-, I think there was a lot of solid moves here. Kalijah Kancey, I think pairing him up with Vita Vea, really fun. Pass rush specialist in Kancey with Vea, who's a really good run stopper when he's on top of his game, with some pass rush upside as well. And then even some of their later picks, like a Trey Palmer from Nebraska, fastest wide receiver in the class. I'm kind of intrigued to see what he looks like in this offense. Jose Ramirez from Eastern Michigan. Under the radar, day 3 edge rusher that lingered, I think, way too long on the board. How does he factor in this? Yaya Diaby, uber athletic edge out of Louisville. Could he maybe be that Shaq Barrett replacement? So I think there's a lot of moves that I like. Cody Mauch, another interior offensive lineman addition to try to patch up and keep that unit of strength, and maybe even a potential Ryan Jensen replacement long-term at center. So intrigued and optimistic about how that second-round pick will turn out. So yeah, a lot of solid moves. Nothing, again, that's like, wow, holy cow, what an unbelievable pick, and that's going to make this team, the best version of themselves. Nothing like that. It's just, okay, that's solid. Like that pick. Good value. Think that's about the right spot for him to go. That addresses a need. Okay. Like a lot what they do, but kind of like the Saints. Nothing that over the top, like wow inducing. Offseason grade, I'll go C+. And again, they kept the roster around QB really, really solid. I'm thinking about doing a video where I rank the rosters outside of quarterbacks because it's something like this. Because I think Tampa, if you exclude the quarterback position, still has a lot to be excited about. It's Baker Mayfield and a reclamation project, and then Kyle Trask we haven't seen under center. And that's hard to put your faith into. So yeah, I think they did a good job giving those two guys a shot and a roster that could give them the chance to become the best versions of themselves. It's just going to come down to those two guys. Biggest question mark left, obviously, is quarterback, but that would have been too much of an easy layup answer, and I've already hit the nail on the coffin there. So we've already talked about that ad nauseum. Interior offensive line, specifically guard, right? Because right now our lad shows Cody Mauch starting at right guard and Matt Filer at left guard. Decided to go Filer because he's coming off a down year with the Chargers, but before that had been a solid player in Pittsburgh, and when he first got to LA was a really solid piece. I think especially at left guard could be a really sizable upgrade over who they had playing there last year. You get Jensen back at center, and then Mauch there at right guard, and then I think maybe long term he becomes the center of the future for Tampa Bay. But if Mauch and Filer are solid to above average players at left and right guard, This offensive line, I think, is going to be okay. Within another question mark, maybe being right tackle with Luke Gedeke. But I like Gedeke coming out of Central Michigan, so I have some optimism. But basically, offensive line as a whole, Filer, Mock, Gedeke, those are 3 guys that are going to be huge determining factors on where this team goes. On top of course, the quarterback position, which would have been a layup answer here for biggest question mark left. But that is going to do it for my NFC South offseason grades. What do you think about the video? Where was I right? Where was I wrong? What grade should be bumped up and what grade should be lowered? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. And what do you think about the 4 offseasons we talked about today? The Bucs, the Falcons, the Saints, and the Panthers. Who was the biggest winner out of the NFC South from the draft, free agency, and trades? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. That's going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.